My daughter Camila met Rafael during a business trip last year. She was working on a project with a partner company, and he was apparently one of the consultants on the team. When she came back, she wouldn't stop talking about him. She said he was smart, confident, very polite, and had a great sense of humor. I didn't think much of it at first. Camila always kept her personal life separate, so I figured if she was sharing something, it probably meant this guy was important. A few weeks later, she asked if she could bring him over for dinner. I said sure. That night, he walked into our house like he'd been there 100 times. Firm handshake, big smile, well-dressed, not too flashy. He looked me straight in the eye and said it was an honor to meet me. Right then, I could already see how smooth he was. My wife liked him. Camila looked happy, everything seemed perfect. Rafael sat across from me at the dinner table, and throughout the night he complimented everything. The food, the house, even the way our family interacted. He said we reminded him of his own family, although he didn't say much about them. He kept turning the attention back to me, asking how I built my company from scratch, what inspired me to start it, what my biggest challenges were. At first, I thought he was just being polite. I've had those conversations before with people genuinely interested in business. But Rafael wasn't just making conversation. He was listening closely, almost taking mental notes. He repeated small details back later. When I talked about a hard time I had in the early days, he circled back to it and said, "That's why men like you are rare." It didn't feel like flattery. It felt rehearsed, like he had said this to someone else before. Still, I kept quiet. I didn't want to jump to conclusions. Not long after that, Camila told us they were officially dating. She was glowing, said Rafael treated her with more kindness and respect than anyone she'd been with before. I was happy for her, truly. Then, within a couple of months, they were engaged. It felt fast, but she was an adult and I didn't want to get in the way. Rafael started coming over more. Every time he brought a bottle of wine, flowers for my wife, or some thoughtful gift. But slowly his conversation started leaning toward the business again. He'd ask things like, "Cool, so how big is the engineering team now?" Or, "How do you guys decide on your overseas projects?" It wasn't casual small talk. He was digging, gently, but consistently. I'd answer vaguely. I wanted to see how far he'd go with it. My wife didn't notice. Camila definitely didn't. I don't think they ever would have guessed he had another motive. He wasn't aggressive about it. He never demanded anything or pushed too hard. That's what made it clever. He'd bring up something company-related, then immediately switch the subject to something innocent, like sports or food. But every conversation left behind little crumbs. One night, he asked if I had plans to retire soon. I told him not anytime soon. He laughed and said, "Well, when you do, I hope Camila's ready to take over." I smiled and said nothing. He added, "Of course I'll be there to support her." That's when I knew he wasn't just in love with my daughter. He wanted in. And not just into our family. Into the company, into the money, into the legacy I'd spent 3 decades building. He wanted a shortcut. He saw Camila as his entry point. But I still didn't say a word. Let him talk. Let him feel comfortable. I needed to understand just how far he was planning to go. At one point, he started making friends with some of our company staff. I got reports that he'd shown up at a corporate lunch with Camila and introduced himself as the future of Lyra and Ganharia. He made it sound like a joke, but I've been around enough snakes in this world to recognize one. I had a gut feeling, and my gut's never wrong, but I didn't want to confront Camila yet. She was in love, and if I brought it up without proof, I'd be the villain. Rafael thought he was flying under the radar. He thought I saw him as a respectful young man, ready to join the family. In truth, I had already started watching him closely. Every word he said, every move he made. I knew what he wanted. I just didn't let him know that I knew. Not yet. Let him keep playing his part. Let him believe he was winning. My daughter met Rafael during a business trip. He was polite, charming, always said the right thing. When she brought him home, he went out of his way to compliment every detail about our family. He said he looked up to men like me. In just a few months, they were engaged. Rafael acted helpful, kind, always present, but he was way too interested in the company, always asking about growth, profits, investments, and who would take over when I retired. At first, I thought maybe he was just curious, but soon I saw he was collecting information. I didn't say anything. He thought he was impressing me. I let him believe that, because deep down, I already knew exactly what he wanted. He began showing up at the office more often, even when Camilla wasn't around. At first, people assumed he was just visiting her, but it didn't take long for him to start walking around like he belonged there. He'd stop and chat with people in different departments. He learned their names fast, especially the ones who worked in finance or operations. He'd lean in, smile, and ask things like, "So how's the performance this quarter?" Or, "Any big moves coming up soon?" When someone hesitated, he'd say, "Oh, don't worry, I'm just curious." He was smooth. Never pushed too hard, just enough to make people think he was already involved. I started getting messages from managers asking if Rafael had an official role. I told them no. They were confused, and so were some of the employees. But Rafael didn't seem confused at all. He was too comfortable. He even started joining internal meetings. Not official ones, but casual planning sessions and team gatherings. He wasn't invited. He just showed up, said he was there to learn, and no one pushed back. I watched it all. He'd bring notebooks, ask questions, suggest ideas. He started calling people by their nicknames, as if they were close. Some of the younger staff found him friendly. A few of the older ones looked uncomfortable, but said nothing. The worst part was how naturally he blended in, like he had rehearsed this. And the way he talked about Camilla made it sound like their marriage was already a done deal. That gave him confidence, too much confidence. At a charity event hosted by the company, he walked around saying things like, "We plan to modernize the structure next year." We. He said we like he was already part of leadership. Someone asked if he worked with us, and he said, "I'm the president's future son-in-law." Once he said we should allow flexible hours because young professionals expect more freedom. I asked him if he even knew what departments we had. He shrugged and said, "I just want to help build the future." I pretended to be polite. He didn't realize how obvious he was being. Every one of his suggestions ended the same way. "I want to help build what will one day be mine too." That phrase stuck in my head. It wasn't subtle. He was testing me, seeing how far he could go without being pushed back. Everyone else thought he was just being enthusiastic, but I knew better. I'd seen this before. People who attach themselves to power thinking they can take a shortcut. He wasn't here for Camilla. One morning, one of my directors came to me looking nervous. He said Rafael had called him directly asking about upcoming acquisitions. Not for gossip, but to see if the company was moving in the right direction. He told him to direct those questions to me. Rafael apologized and said he was just trying to be proactive. That same day, someone from accounting told me he asked for reports. Nothing confidential, but enough to make people wonder who gave him that kind of access. I didn't react. I thanked them and told them to just let me know if he asked again. I didn't confront Rafael. I needed to see how far he'd go. I let him keep thinking he was doing a great job fitting in. Let him think people liked him and respected his opinion. He had no idea how many people were already reporting back to me. He thought he was charming everyone, but all he was doing was digging himself deeper. Eventually, Rafael stopped being careful. He acted like the company was already half his. I caught him using our logo on a personal pitch deck. He was apparently trying to launch a joint venture with someone he met online. He emailed a supplier asking for quotes, signed as Business Partner Almeida Group. I was furious, but I didn't explode. I printed the email, folded it, and kept it in my drawer. I was building a file. Rafael thought I was blind or old-fashioned or maybe just too trusting. I wasn't. I just didn't need to say anything yet. His ego was making my job easier, and one day, he crossed the line completely. He walked into my office, didn't knock, and said he wanted to talk about his place in the company's future. I kept my face neutral. Inside, I was done playing nice. This was the moment I knew would come. He sat down like he owned the chair. I looked at him and asked calmly, "Are you asking for a job before you even marry my daughter?" He smiled. the same fake confident smile he always wore when trying to win someone over. He leaned back in the chair, crossed his legs, and said, "I already consider myself part of the family." Rafael started to act like he already belonged to the empire I built. He called employees by name, asked the finance team for numbers using vague excuses like, "just curious." He showed up at company events without being invited, introducing himself as the president's son-in-law. Every week he came with fresh ideas to modernize company culture, and always ended with the same line, "I want to help build what'll be mine too." One day, he came into my office and said he wanted to talk about the company's future. I tried to stay calm. I asked, "You want a position before marrying my daughter?" He smiled and said, "I already consider myself part of the family." He said it would be a talk between men. I agreed, mostly because I wanted to see what game he was playing. We met at a small cafe near my office. He showed up 10 minutes early, already sitting at a corner table, phone face down, smiling like we were old friends. As soon as I sat down, he started thanking me for trusting him with Camilla. He said all the right things, how lucky he was, how grateful he felt, how much he admired me. I didn't interrupt. I let him talk. I could tell he had practiced what to say. His tone was soft at first, respectful, but then it started to change. He leaned forward, his smile fading slightly, and I knew something else was coming. That's when he said he wanted my blessing for the marriage. But not just that. He wanted more. He paused, probably expecting me to say something, but I didn't. He took a sip of coffee, adjusted his watch, and said he wanted to discuss his future role in the family. I asked, "Role?" And he nodded like it was the most natural thing in the world. He said he wanted to help Camilla handle the business, that he had ideas and could add value. He talked about how a lot of heirs ruin family companies because they don't have someone experienced beside them. I listened carefully, and every word he said confirmed what I'd already suspected. He wasn't talking about helping her. He was talking about securing his own position. He tried to sound noble, as if he were doing all this for her sake, but the way he kept saying "our company" made it clear he saw himself as part of it already. He hadn't even married my daughter yet, and he was already planning his seat at the table. He kept going, said that as Camilla's husband, it would make sense for him to be formally involved in management decisions, that he could help with long-term strategies, financial decisions, and company vision. I asked him what he knew about our company's structure. He shrugged and said, "Not much, but I can learn fast." Then came the part that really got to me. He said, "You've built something incredible, sir. It's only fair that Camilla has someone capable to protect it. And it's only fair that I have some kind of security too." He used the word security like it was casual, but I heard it loud and clear. He wanted money guaranteed, a share of the company, maybe a mention in the will. He called it a formality. He was testing me, seeing if I'd take the bait or push back. I kept my face still, but inside I was boiling. When he mentioned the testamento, I knew he had crossed the line. He said it like he was giving me advice. It might be wise to include something official, maybe in the contract or in the will, just to ensure stability. He looked confident when he said it, as if he thought it made perfect sense. I let a few seconds of silence stretch between us. He probably thought I was considering it seriously. In reality, I was processing how bold this man really was. He wasn't even subtle anymore. He'd moved from curiosity to entitlement. I leaned back, nodded slowly, and said, "That's an interesting point, Rafael. Let me think about it." He smiled, relieved, and said, "Of course, sir, I knew you'd understand." He reached across the table and shook my hand like we'd just made a deal. I didn't pull away. I wanted him to leave that cafe believing he'd won something. The conversation ended soon after. He paid the bill without asking, clearly feeling triumphant. He stood up, buttoned his blazer, and told me how much he respected my vision for the family. He said he just wanted to be part of it, to help. His tone was so rehearsed it almost sounded fake, but he believed every word he said. I told him to take care, shook his hand again, and walked to my car. I didn't feel angry anymore. I felt focused. Rafael had finally shown me his real face. He thought he had everything under control. He thought I was old and naive enough to fall for his polite manipulation. But what he didn't know was that by asking for security, he'd just given me mine, the final proof I needed to act. I drove back to the office without saying a word to anyone. I already knew my next step. When he got home, he must have felt proud of himself. Later that night, Camilla came by the house all smiles, saying Rafael had told her our conversation went perfectly. She said he was grateful, that he felt like I finally saw him as part of the family. I didn't correct her. I just nodded and told her I was glad things were moving along. She kissed me on the cheek and said she was happy. I smiled back, but in my mind I was replaying every word he'd said at that cafe. He had no idea what was coming. The following week I started setting things in motion, quietly, patiently. Rafael thought the hardest part was winning my blessing. He was wrong. That was the easiest part. He just didn't know that the moment he mentioned something in the will, he'd made the biggest mistake of his life. And I never forget a mistake that big. The next day, I called a quiet meeting with 3 departments: legal, finance, and my PR team. I didn't want anyone outside those rooms to know what was going on. I told them to drop whatever they were doing and make my requests top priority. First, I asked the legal team to go over my entire will, line by line. I told them to remove any clause that allowed inheritance to spouses or partners by affinity. Everything had to be airtight. I wasn't going to leave a single gap Rafael could use. Then I moved to asset protection. I had my lawyers begin the process of securing every part of my estate under strict legal shielding. No one would be able to touch anything. Not shares, not land, not even old bank accounts. Finally, I had the finance department review all internal access and permissions. Rafael's name was removed from everything. If he ever tried to walk in again, he'd be stopped at the door. I also gave very clear orders that Rafael was not to enter any company building again unless escorted by security. His badge wouldn't work, and the front desk would be alerted. But I didn't want him to know that yet. If he found out too soon, he'd back off and disappear, and I needed him close. That's when I hired a private investigator. I told him to dig deep. I wanted everything. Previous jobs, failed businesses, lawsuits, debt, anything odd. He came back with a lot. 2 separate stories stood out. Both involved wealthy young women, both with family businesses. One had a nervous breakdown after her engagement ended suddenly. The reason? Her fiancé drained part of her trust fund using joint accounts. The other signed over partial ownership of her family startup, thinking it was a smart move, as a couple. In both cases, Rafael used different names, but the photo IDs didn't lie. It was him. Now I knew for sure I wasn't just dealing with an opportunist. This was a repeat scammer. He used charm, talked about family, gained trust, and always went after young women from rich families. That pattern made me even more angry, but also more focused. I didn't want just to block him. I wanted to show everyone who he really was, quietly, cleanly. So I called my staff again and told them we'd host a party at my house. The excuse? A big family celebration to officially welcome our future son-in-law. I said it would be casual, friendly, and full of love. Behind the scenes, I started planning every detail like a military operation. I told my assistant to send invites to all company directors, board members, and key employees. I invited family from both sides, people Rafael had never met, and even sent a warm invitation to a couple of journalists I trusted. They thought it was a social event. It wasn't. While the team worked on logistics, I prepared the final setup. I had one room in the house turned into a controlled environment. Clean background, quiet space, hidden cameras. I brought in a professional video team I had worked with before, ones who knew how to operate discreetly. I told them to wire the room for high-quality sound and video. Then I told my legal advisor we'd need a notary present, unofficially, just nearby in case. I made sure Rafael would have every reason to feel comfortable and confident that night. I had gifts wrapped, his favorite wine ordered, and even printed out a welcome to the family banner. I didn't want to scare him off. I wanted him to feel celebrated, like he was finally being accepted. He needed to believe he was winning. That's when people like him get sloppy. I needed him to walk into that room thinking he was at the top of the world. Meanwhile, I gave specific instructions to my staff and security. Everyone had roles. Someone would greet guests. Someone else would guide Rafael at the right moment to the reserved room. The journalists were told they'd get a few words from me later, just a short quote about legacy and family values. I didn't want any chaos. I wanted precision. My daughter Camila had no idea what I was doing. I didn't blame her. She was in love, and love makes people blind. She thought the party was for her. I didn't correct her. She spent days talking about dresses, decorations, what to serve. I let her choose whatever she wanted. Food, music, everything. I made sure she felt involved so she wouldn't suspect anything. The hardest part was watching her smile when she talked about Rafael. But I couldn't show anything yet. I just nodded, smiled, and pretended to be the proud father who was about to welcome a new son-in-law. On the night of the party, everything was ready. The guests started arriving. The music played softly and everyone was enjoying drinks and appetizers. Rafael arrived like he always did, confident, relaxed, hugging people like they were old friends. He didn't notice the small changes, the cameras, the reserved room, the way staff quietly watched his movements. He walked around talking to directors like he was already on the board. I saw him telling one of my cousins about future plans for the company. I stayed calm, greeted guests, and smiled as if nothing was going on. But inside I was counting down the minutes. The room was set. The team was in place. The cameras were rolling. I waited for the right moment to pull Rafael aside and guide him to the setup. He thought it was just another welcome toast, but it wasn't. I had built the perfect trap, and it was time to see if the future son-in-law could handle it. In the middle of the party, I clinked my glass and asked for everyone's attention. The music faded down. People turned their heads, expecting a toast or maybe a family announcement. Rafael was across the room, laughing with a group of investors near the bar. He had a drink in his hand and looked like he was in complete control of the evening. He was talking with his usual confidence, using our family name like it was already legally his. I watched him gesture as if explaining some big plan for the company. Some of the guests looked impressed, nodding while sipping their wine. I walked toward the center of the room, nodded to the event coordinator and waited for the mic. I didn't say much. I simply asked for silence and requested that Rafael, Camila, and our most important guests join me inside the main living room. My voice was calm, steady. Rafael looked curious, still smiling. Camila looked confused, but she followed. Once everyone was inside, I asked the staff to close the doors. There were about 20 people in the room, directors, family members, 2 reporters, and a few longtime partners. Rafael stood beside Camila, holding her hand. I noticed his smile starting to fade just a little, but he was still trying to look relaxed. A few people whispered, wondering what this was about. I walked to the center and said, "Thank you all for coming tonight. I know most of you thought this was just a family celebration, but it's more than that." I turned toward the wall, and the screen behind me lit up. The first slide was simple. Rafael's face, smiling in a company event he wasn't even invited to. I said, "Let's talk about how this man got here." Rafael tilted his head slightly. Camila stared at the screen, frozen. Nobody said a word. The room was completely quiet. I started explaining how Rafael had slowly inserted himself into the company. I showed emails he sent to finance under fake pretenses, asking for quarterly reports, employee records, and even confidential forecasts. I played audio clips where he asked mid-level managers about future board changes, all while pretending it was just curiosity. He had no job title, no authority, and no reason to ask any of that. Then I showed text messages where he spoke as if he already had a position. Messages where he told people we were planning to make changes at the top soon. Camila was staring at the floor. Rafael shifted uncomfortably but didn't speak. I looked straight at him and said, "You asked me for something in my will, do you remember that?" He didn't answer. I moved to the next part of the presentation. Now things got heavier, because now came the real proof of his intentions, in his own words. I played a screen recording from a closed online group he was part of, some kind of forum where ambitious young men shared stories about climbing the ladder fast. In the clip, Rafael was laughing during a video call with 2 other guys. One of them asked about his engagement, and Rafael said, If everything goes right, by the end of the year, the company's basically mine. He even joked about how easy it was to win over Camilla's trust. The room stayed completely silent. Camilla looked like someone had slapped her. One of the directors muttered, "Unbelievable." I paused the video and let the image of Rafael's smiling face stay on the screen for a few seconds longer. Then I turned back to the guests. This isn't about business. This is about trust. About family. Rafael tried to say something, but I raised my hand and he stopped. His face was pale now. No more smile, just fear. I brought out a stack of documents, printed and organized, and laid them on the table in front of everyone. I said, "For anyone who still has doubts, here are full transcripts, timestamps, and background checks." I had copies prepared for the board members, and one of my assistants started handing them out silently. Nobody was talking. Even the journalist just stood there, recording everything without asking a single question. Rafael kept looking at Camilla like he wanted her to say something, to defend him maybe, but she didn't move. She looked stuck in place, trying to understand how the man she thought she loved had done all this behind her back. I didn't interrupt the silence. I wanted the weight of it to hit everyone. One of the older board members leaned back in his chair and crossed his arms, just shaking his head. Another cleared his throat but didn't say anything. The room felt frozen. At that point, Rafael's hands were shaking. He looked like he was searching for something to say, some excuse, some explanation, but there was nothing left. I looked at him and said calmly, "You were almost good at hiding it, but not good enough." Camilla finally turned to him and asked, "Is all of this true?" He didn't answer. She asked again, louder this time, "Did you really say the company would be yours?" He opened his mouth but closed it again. She pulled her hand away from his and stepped back. One of the journalists took a photo, but I didn't care anymore. This needed to be public. Everyone needed to see who he really was. I nodded to security. They walked in quietly and stood by the door. Rafael wasn't under arrest or anything, and not yet, but he understood the message. He wouldn't be welcome anywhere near us ever again. Just like that, the party turned into something else entirely. No one clapped. No one said cheers. It wasn't a celebration anymore. It was a reckoning. The truth was laid out, and Rafael couldn't run from it. I looked around and said, "That's all, thank you for your time." Some people stayed seated, stunned. Others started whispering. Camilla walked out of the room without saying another word. Rafael stayed behind for a few seconds, frozen, then followed, but 2 security guards stepped in and blocked him. He wasn't going anywhere near her. He was done. I let everyone absorb what they had just seen. The directors knew what it meant. The family knew. The press had their headline. I had done what I needed to do. Cleanly, publicly, and with evidence. No one in that room would ever forget what happened that night. No one said a word. Rafael tried to laugh. It was that nervous, fake laugh people use when they feel cornered but want to act like everything's fine. He looked around the room, his face trying to play calm, but his eyes were all over the place. "This is all manipulated," he said. "That video is taken out of context." I was joking. It was just a stupid thing among friends. I love Camilla. That's what really matters. His voice cracked halfway through. Camilla didn't say a word. She was standing near the corner of the room, arms crossed tightly, her mouth clenched. He stepped forward, trying to look sincere, but no one moved. The guests, the board members, the journalists, all of them just stared. I kept quiet, let him squirm, let him try to explain the unexplainable. He was holding on to whatever lie he thought might save him. But I hadn't even played my final card yet. And when I did, there'd be nothing left to say. That's when I pulled out the printed contract. I didn't say much. I just held it up and walked to the center of the room again. "If it's all love," I said, "maybe you can explain this." I handed it to one of the directors and motioned for him to read it out loud. It was a legal draft, with Rafael's name on it. A request for universal community property in case of marriage, meaning everything Camilla had would become his. Every account, every asset, every share. On the side of the Word document in the comments section was a note from Rafael himself. "Speed this up before any updates to the will." It was dated 2 weeks before that little coffee chat he had with me. Rafael's face turned white. Camila gasped and walked over to look at the paper herself. Her hands shook as she read it. The room was silent again. No excuses this time, just the truth. Camila started crying right there. She didn't even try to hold it in. It wasn't loud or dramatic. It was that quiet kind of cry where you can't breathe properly. She looked at Rafael, then looked away. He tried to step toward her and said, "Camila, listen, I can explain." But she took a step back. She didn't want him near her. "Don't touch me," she said, her voice shaking. He stopped, confused, like he couldn't believe she wasn't on his side anymore. She turned to the small table near the wall, picked up a champagne glass and slammed it down on the floor. It shattered loudly. Then she looked straight at him and said, "You're trash." No yelling. Just those 3 words. Clear. Final. Rafael stood frozen. The mask had dropped. There was nothing left for him to pretend. Everyone in that room saw the real him now, and he knew it. His game was over. Without saying a word, 2 security guards entered the room. I didn't signal them. I didn't have to. They already knew. Rafael looked around, suddenly realizing what was about to happen. Wait, hold on," he started saying, his voice shaking now. "This isn't necessary. We can talk. This is family stuff. Don't make a scene." But no one moved. No one agreed. The guards stood beside him and politely asked him to come with them. He hesitated. "Camila, please say something," he begged. She didn't even look at him. The guards took a step closer. That was enough. Rafael straightened his jacket like he still had some dignity left and started walking toward the door with them. No one clapped. No one spoke. Just the sound of his own shoes on the floor. Everyone kept their eyes on him. He passed by investors, company leaders, people he had tried so hard to charm. Now none of them even nodded. As he reached the front door, I stepped forward. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't yell. I just looked him in the eyes. "You came here thinking you'd leave with a piece of my empire," I said. He blinked fast, breathing through his nose like he was holding back frustration or tears. "You thought this was about winning over my daughter or impressing me with your ambition, but you made one mistake." He didn't answer. He just stood there, staring at me. "You underestimated the family you were trying to steal from." I leaned in a bit closer, kept my tone steady. "You wanted an inheritance," I said. "Well, now you're going to leave this house owing us." He looked down, said nothing. Then the guards opened the door and he stepped out into the night alone. He didn't even turn back. The door closed behind him. He was gone, and that chapter of our lives closed with it. The room stayed quiet even after he was gone. People didn't know what to do or say. It wasn't the kind of moment where you go back to eating shrimp and chatting about business. Some guests got up and quietly left. Others stayed, talking in hushed tones, trying to process what just happened. Camila had gone to her room, and I told the staff not to disturb her. I stayed in the main room, shaking a few hands, thanking people for coming. A few directors came to me and said I did the right thing. The journalists didn't even bother asking for comments. They had the story. They knew what they just witnessed was something rare, a scammer exposed in real time, in front of 60 people, with no place to hide. Rafael had come looking for power, for money, for a shortcut, but he left with nothing, not even his pride. "You wanted an inheritance," I had told him. "You'll leave this place in debt." I sat down with my communications team and asked them to draft an official statement. It was posted on the company's website, sent to all our partners, investors, and shared across our internal platforms. It read, "Rafael Valverde has no ties to our company. He never had, and he never will. Any public or private statement suggesting otherwise will be handled through legal means." I made sure the wording was clear and strong. There could be no confusion or gray area. People needed to know that we were completely disconnected from him. No second chances, no explanation needed. I wanted this message to reach every client, every stakeholder, every single employee. Rafael had tried to infiltrate our family through lies, and I wasn't going to let that stain linger one more minute. The press picked up the note almost instantly. Some articles called it bold. I didn't care. It was necessary. Rafael Valverde was officially erased from our company. We canceled the engagement party that had been scheduled for later that month. The planning had already started, catering booked, decorations selected, guests confirmed. I didn't care about the money lost. I called the event planner myself and told her to stop everything. She asked if we were postponing or rescheduling. I said, no, it's canceled for good. After that, I made sure that all the pictures of Rafael with our family were deleted from every official platform. Our social media, our newsletters, everything. I called the IT department and told them to do a full sweep of the internal drive. No photos, no mentions, no traces. I wasn't acting out of anger. I was making sure he had no leverage left. He had already tried to use our name for his benefit. I wasn't going to make it easy for him again. Every digital footprint connected to him had to be wiped clean. Then came the next discovery. One of our directors informed me that Rafael had been using my name to request meetings. Apparently, he emailed a couple of potential partners, introducing himself as my future son-in-law, and hinted that I had asked him to discuss early partnership ideas. One of those meetings had already been accepted. I was furious but not surprised. I told my assistant to cancel that meeting immediately. Then I instructed the entire contracts department. If the name Rafael Valverde appears anywhere in a document, I want to be informed directly. I didn't care if it was a passing reference or a typo. I wanted full control of anything that could give him access or credibility. He wasn't just manipulative in private. He was actively trying to plant himself in our business deals. I couldn't let him fake authority one more time. From that point on, no one in my company would speak to him, not even by mistake. That same day, I filed a police report. I wanted to make sure this wasn't just a family issue. It was now a legal matter. The report listed his actions: manipulation for financial gain, unauthorized use of our company name, and an attempt to insert himself into internal operations through deception. I sat with my lawyers and walked them through everything: the video, the contract, the meetings he scheduled. We agreed to pursue charges for emotional extortion and unauthorized use of our company's image and brand. I knew he might try to play the victim card, but I wasn't interested in stories. Everything we had was documented: proof on paper, proof on video, proof in email threads. My legal team assured me we had a solid case, and I wasn't doing this for revenge. I was doing it to protect the company, my daughter, and anyone else he might try to manipulate next. Meanwhile, Camilla wasn't talking much. She stayed in her room most of that day. I checked in on her a couple of times, brought her food, asked if she wanted to talk, but she just shook her head. She wasn't angry. She looked tired, worn out. She had defended him for months, believed in him, trusted him, and now everything had collapsed in public. I gave her space. The next morning, she came into my office with her passport in hand. "I need to leave," she said. "Just for a while. Somewhere quiet. I need to think." I nodded. No questions. She booked a ticket for Europe that afternoon. I made sure she had everything she needed: hotel, driver, support. I told her to take her time, however long she needed. The house felt different without her, but I knew it was the right move. She needed to breathe. She needed distance from everything, from him, from us, from all of it. I stayed in town while she was away. There was still cleanup to do. I met with department heads, updated them on the internal protocols regarding Rafael, and reminded everyone not to engage with outside inquiries. The legal process would take its course, but from an internal standpoint, he was already gone. Some people asked me why I went so public with it. Why not just handle it quietly? But I didn't want silence. I wanted accountability. I wanted him to know he crossed the wrong family. And I wanted others like him to think twice before trying something similar. In the days that followed, I received a few messages from business contacts thanking me for the transparency. Some even shared that they'd had suspicions about Rafael, but didn't want to interfere. I didn't blame them. People like him are good at acting. But the show was over. Rafael Valverde had been cut off from our lives completely and permanently. 3 of the companies we worked with closely cut ties with Rafael within just a couple of days. One of them sent me a formal letter, saying they were unaware of his real intentions and didn't want to be associated with someone who tried to manipulate a family business. Another called me directly, apologized, and said Rafael had been reaching out behind the scenes for months, trying to set up side deals using my name. The third simply blocked him and updated their vendor list to remove any trace of him. These weren't small partners either. They were long-term clients with a lot of weight. Watching them react so fast showed me that the truth was spreading fast and wide. People weren't just hearing rumors. They were reacting to facts. Screenshots, videos, and details were already in circulation. Rafael probably thought this would all blow over, but it didn't. People were watching, people were talking. The business world doesn't forgive this kind of thing easily. That same week, something unexpected happened. The law firm Rafael always claimed to work with issued a public statement. They posted it on LinkedIn, their website, and even sent out emails to their client base. It clearly said that Rafael Valverde had never been employed, contracted, or in any professional relationship with them. Not as a lawyer, not as a consultant, not even as an intern. They stated they were taking legal steps to prevent any future misuse of their name. I read that post 3 times. It was short but direct. He had lied about where he worked for over a year, not just to my daughter but to everyone. Events, meetings, phone calls, all based on a fake job title. I forwarded the post to my legal team and also sent it to Camila. She just replied with one word: figures. At that point, even she wasn't surprised anymore. Rafael's web of lies was collapsing faster than I expected. Later that week, I got 2 emails that made everything even more real. Both came from women I didn't know. One was from a woman in São Paulo, the other from Porto Alegre. They introduced themselves and said they had both been engaged to Rafael at different times. One of them was engaged just 2 years before he met Camila, the other around 5 years ago. Both stories were almost identical. Rafael showed up charming, sweet, supportive, made promises about marriage and kids, said all the right things. Then, slowly, he started getting involved in their family's businesses. One of them lost access to a company bank account after trusting him with documents. The other one had to fight in court to recover a property she signed over in his name. They told me they only reached out after seeing our story online and realizing they weren't alone. I thanked them for the information and told them they did the right thing. We were going to act. I met with our legal team the next morning. I handed them the new statements from the 2 ex-fiancés, plus all the screenshots, notes, and evidence we already had. I wanted them to put together a full report and push for a lawsuit, not just for our family, but including the other victims too. We wanted a joint case. They agreed it was the best way to go. Rafael had done this more than once, and it wasn't just emotional damage anymore. It was fraud, impersonation, and attempted theft. The case file grew thick within hours. Every piece of evidence was added: the video, the fake contract, his meetings with partners, the social media screenshots. Our lawyers started drafting the lawsuit that same afternoon. We weren't out for revenge. We were out for protection, and to make sure no other family, no other daughter would go through this again. Rafael had left a trail. Now it was finally catching up with him. By the weekend, Rafael started to panic online. First, he tried to delete everything. His Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, all disappeared overnight. But screenshots had already spread. In group chats, on business forums, even in private email threads, people were sharing everything. Then suddenly, he reappeared on a new account, saying he was the victim of a witch hunt. He claimed that Camila's family was rich and powerful and trying to ruin him for personal reasons. He said we edited videos, faked messages, and destroyed his life out of jealousy. But no one bought it. People had seen the real content. It was too late. His story didn't stick. The screenshots were everywhere. And the internet doesn't forget. I didn't even need to reply. The truth was defending itself. Watching him scramble online trying to rewrite the story was just sad. It was like watching a bad actor try to improvise after being caught lying on stage. Less than a week later, Rafael's name was all over private business groups. WhatsApp chats, Telegram channels, email chains. People were warning each other. Screenshots of his messages were sent with big red text saying, "Do not hire, do not trust, do not let him in." He became a cautionary tale. Some groups nicknamed him the heiress scammer. In less than 7 days, his reputation was gone. It didn't matter if he deleted his accounts or changed cities. The business world talks fast, and bad news travels even faster. 3 weeks later, I got word that he had left town. No one knew exactly where he went. No job, no contacts, no more invitations to events. And of course, no fiancé. Rafael was done. He came after our family looking for a shortcut to wealth, and now he couldn't even show his face. No money, no inheritance, no second chance. Just his name. Ruined. Forever. Camilla came back. After weeks away, after everything that happened with Rafael, she came home. She didn't say much at first. She just sat across from me in the kitchen and asked if I had a few minutes. Of course I did. She started by saying sorry, not because she had done anything wrong, but because she felt guilty. She said she didn't see the signs, that she was blinded, that she truly believed Rafael loved her. I told her something simple. Nobody sees when they want to love. That's not a mistake. That's just human. She nodded, and I could see she was holding back tears, but she didn't cry. She looked calm, looked tired but calm. Then she asked if she could come back to the company. She said she needed something to focus on, something that made sense after all of this. I told her I was open to it, but only if she was coming back with a different mission. She asked what I meant, and I explained it as clearly as I could. I told her she could return, but not just to go back to how things were. Things had changed. She had changed. So I didn't want her stepping back into her old position. That chapter was closed. Instead, I suggested she take a role in our family's foundation, the institute we'd built years ago for community work and social outreach. At first, she hesitated. She wasn't sure if she'd be helpful there. But then I mentioned an idea I had been thinking about since the fallout with Rafael. We should launch a legal support program for women who had gone through the same thing. Women tricked by charmers, manipulators, fake relationships built on lies. Her eyes lit up immediately. She said yes. She wanted in. That same week, she met with the Institute's director, and they started planning the structure. Her energy came back fast, this time with purpose. The first thing they worked on was a prevention campaign. The idea wasn't just to help women after the damage was done, but to catch things early. Spotting red flags, learning how financial abuse works, understanding how these people operate. Camilla threw herself into it. She wasn't doing it from theory. She had lived it, so everything was practical. Real examples, real warnings. She brought in the 2 ex-fiancés who had contacted me earlier and asked if they would share their stories. Anonymously, of course. They said yes. We filmed testimonies. We created workshops. She even convinced a local university to offer legal interns to assist in screening cases. What started as an internal project became something public within weeks, and the company supported it fully. This was no side gig. It was serious work. Camilla didn't talk about Rafael anymore. She didn't have to. She had turned all that pain into something useful, something that could help others before it was too late. Meanwhile, back at the company, we made some clear internal decisions. The board seat that Rafael used to talk about all the time, the one he was quietly aiming for, had remained empty since a previous director left. Instead of filling it with some big name or outside hire, we gave it to someone who had earned it. A woman who had started here as an intern 10 years ago. Quiet, consistent, loyal. No drama, no spotlight, just good work day after day. Her promotion made a statement, and not just to outsiders, but to everyone in the company. We reward effort, not charm. We promote those who build with us, not those who try to skip the line. The announcement went out the same week Camilla's project launched. Everything felt aligned, like we were finally back on track, even stronger than before. I didn't have to explain that seat wasn't Rafael's. Everyone already knew. He had burned that bridge forever. After the dust settled, I sat down with our legal team again. We went through my entire estate plan, every clause, every condition. I didn't want any gray area. The new version of my will was clear. Inheritance only goes to family members under very strict protection clauses. No partner, no spouse, no distant relative can inherit a single cent without going through layers of vetting. We added legal checks, financial background evaluations, and specific conditions tied to any transfer of assets. This wasn't just about Rafael. This was about setting a new standard, a smarter one. My lawyers called it one of the most secure documents they'd seen. I told them good. That's exactly what I wanted. No one else would get near what I built without proving they deserved it. And not with pretty words or empty promises. With actions, real ones. The kind you can't fake in meetings or family dinners. If someone wants in, they'll earn it. Every bit of it. Today, if someone wants to join this family, they'll have to show more than nice manners and compliments. They'll have to go through real evaluation. Not just by me, but by professionals, investigators, lawyers, advisors. I'm not ashamed of that. I don't care if people say it's too cold or too controlling. I've seen what happens when you don't protect what matters. Camilla understands that now too. She's different, more focused, wiser. We don't talk about Rafael much anymore. There's no need. His chapter is closed. But the lessons stayed with us. The way we see people. The way we open our doors. Everything changed. I don't care how polite someone is or how well they dress. If they want to get close to this family, they'll go through the process. And if they don't like it, they can walk away. There's no second chance, no shortcuts, no going back. Rafael tried to make contact one last time. 2 months later, it came as a letter. Not an email, not a message. A printed letter in an envelope, handwritten, signed with his full name. It was delivered to the office by a courier, not by him personally. My assistant brought it to my desk and asked if I wanted to open it. I didn't. I could already guess what was inside. The damage was done. There was nothing he could say that would change anything. But I held the letter in my hand for a few seconds anyway, just looking at it. It was thick, like he had written a lot. I stood up, walked to the hallway, and handed it back to my assistant. Return it. Don't open it. Don't read it. Just send it back. That was it. I didn't need to know what was inside. I had already closed that chapter, and so had my daughter. The next day, I told Camila about it. I wanted her to hear it from me in case he tried to reach out to her directly. Her reaction surprised me. She didn't ask what was in the letter. She didn't ask to see it. She didn't even ask how it was delivered. She just said, "I don't care, I don't want it near me." And that was all. That's when I knew for sure she had moved on. Whatever feelings she had left were gone now. Not anger, not sadness, just nothing. I told her we had already returned the letter, unopened. But she wanted to make sure there was no room for misunderstanding. She suggested we send it back with a message. Not a threat, just a reminder. I agreed. We had it hand-delivered by a courier with a printed note inside. This time, you used the wrong name, and you touched the wrong family. It wasn't a threat. It was closure. After that, we never heard from him again. No more letters, no emails, no calls, no fake profiles, nothing. He vanished from our radar completely. We did a quiet check a few weeks later just to be safe. We had someone from our legal team search public records, social media, business registrations. It didn't take long to find out what he was up to. Apparently, Rafael had started a small YouTube channel and a cheap website where he tried to sell online courses. The topic? Emotional intelligence for successful couples. I didn't know whether to laugh or shake my head. That man had some nerve. The irony was just too much. The channel had barely any views. The site looked rushed and the content was empty. He had gone from trying to marry into a family business to recording videos in what looked like a borrowed living room. It was pathetic, but I felt no satisfaction from it. It was just the natural consequence of who he really was. At the same time, we got confirmation that his company had officially shut down. The office space he used was empty, the phone number disconnected, the website offline. One of our partners told us quietly that Rafael had tried to reach out to them for a meeting. This was before the letter, but they declined without even replying. Word had spread. His name was on a kind of blacklist now. Not officially, but everyone knew. No one wanted to associate with someone who played that kind of game, especially in our circle. He didn't just burn a bridge, he blew it up. He left town quietly, or at least that's what we think. No one saw him pack or move. No goodbye messages. He just disappeared from the scene. And honestly, that's exactly what needed to happen. I didn't want revenge, I wanted distance, and we got that. As for us, life moved on. Slowly at first, then all at once. Camilla went back to work with the Institute and was soon traveling again, giving talks, meeting people, doing real work. I could see in her eyes she had changed. Not in a bad way, just stronger. More careful. She trusted fewer people, but she trusted herself more. And that was something no one could take from her again. The company kept growing. Our clients stayed loyal. Our internal team was more united than ever. I received dozens of messages after the whole incident. Not out of pity, but respect. People understood what I had done and why. They respected the way we handled it. Clean, firm, no drama, no chaos. Just facts, decisions, protection. Camilla and I still talk about everything that happened sometimes, but not with bitterness, just with clarity. We both know it could have been much worse, but it wasn't, because we acted fast. My daughter is doing well. And me? I sleep well at night. Because here, inheritance is not something you just give away. It's something you earn. It doesn't go to the one who talks the most or dresses the best. It goes to the one who deserves it. And I protect what I built, what we built, with everything I've got. That means protecting my daughter, my legacy, my name. And if anyone else ever tries to do what Rafael did, they'll be met with the same wall. We don't open the door just because someone smiles nice. We look beyond that. We dig. We verify. And if something doesn't feel right, we shut it down early. Rafael thought he was smart. He thought he had a plan. But what he didn't know was this. We have a plan too. One that doesn't leave room for leeches. So yes, Rafael tried one last time. And we sent his letter back, unopened.